I don't know where you want to start. What did you have in mind?
What do I have in mind? In 2013, I'm just going to round up a little bit how I actually got to this point. Are we online now?
Yeah.
So Volker is fine.
Yeah.
I've seen him already. Okay. In 2013, I had a situation with my team that I had an experienced setter and I had a young setter. She was 17. That was third division Germany. Germany has about, depending on the local federations, Germany has about 8 divisions, sometimes even 9. So it was third division. And anytime I put her in, her nerves were like skyrocketed, and every ball she touched, she was called double all the time. So that was a psychological problem. But I thought about this quite some while. How can I get her onto the court and not being the one who always does the error? And I said it would be great if like a youth player, since she was 17, has the option to do a good pass or a really bad pass, which would be the double pass. But with our rules, she has pass, good pass, and error. She was just doing the error, and she just could not get out of this trap at all. And I've seen this with players on any level that just say, in Germany, we say, I got shit on my hands right now, nothing is working. Any time there comes a high ball, I'm afraid to touch it. Then I see setters in second division Germany, they start bumping all over the place since they have actually no confidence in themselves anymore.
Sure.
And that's when I was thinking, what's the problem just to let it run? I know the FIVB says keep the ball flying for years. I know that phrase that they say to actually raise attractiveness of the sport, since we don't have that much interruptions of the game. And our game is constantly interrupted. It's not a continuous game like soccer, like field hockey or Olympic handball, you guys call it here. So it is constantly interrupted, and the attractiveness of the game would actually rise if we get rid of some of the interruptions. And I thought, what is actually the advantage somebody would have if the double is not called on the second ball? And I have to start. I tried to put this into concept. I'll just hold on, share my screen. Hold on. I hope you can all see this now.
Yeah, it's up.
What I did, I just put my opinion about this into several online forums, like on Facebook, mostly on the German part, but also in VCT, the volleyball coaches and trainers in the US, Facebook, the big one. And there, many of the responses we got, they said something like, you can throw the ball, then whatever. But the first thing I need to address there, that a double contact is not a lift.
Right.
Okay, I am just talking about double contact. If somebody is catching the ball and throwing it away, that's an error. Mm-hmm. Okay, but the double contact within one action is the thing I'm talking about here.
Yep.
I got a lot of responses this season. I think even you, John, told me or showed me the one of the NCAA. They planned an experimental rule for spring season 2020. I guess the spring season 2020
for the women, place. Right? For the women, not for the men. For the women. For
the women, but they have the special rule that the double contact on the second contact is allowed if the third contact is of their own team. Is that right?
Yes. So the ball cannot cross the net.
What happens? That was my immediate question. What happens on a setter dump?
If it's clean, then it's okay. If it's a double, then it's still a double.
It's called a double. Oh, okay. That is
at least in theory. That's the way it should. Based on what I've read of what they intended to do, basically what they were just saying is we're going to get rid of the double call if it's second contact to an attacker. If it's second contact over the net, or if it's third contact over the net, then we will still call doubles if we see doubles.
Okay, the third contact, we just leave it out right now. But what happens if somebody sets it over and the attacker of the opponent team tries to kill it, but my defense just gets it up anyway? Is that then called a double if it's ugly?
That's a good question. I don't know if they've clarified, say, what if it's a 50-50 ball?
Okay.
It's in the plane where either player could go for it.
So we have then we have judgment of the referees again. Yes.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I mean, not that you would expect that to happen a lot, but there is some percentage that.
Yeah, sure. Sure, but these are just the things I was thinking about. Then this spring, the biggest German volleyball blog, it's called Volleyball Freak. It has about, I think, 25,000 followers on Facebook. If you know that in Germany we have about 450,000 club players, that is quite a group, quite a, how do you say, target group he has already there. He made a video where he's exactly asked the same thing. Why don't we get rid of the double contact on the second contact at all? Why don't we get rid of it? And it came up back to me, and I was smiling, and I said, okay, here's the link from 2013. We had this already. And what I did, I collected about 60 to 70 comments on these posts, and I clustered them in pros and cons and whatever. You should see the whole thing now. And it was really interesting what came out there. But let me just see first what is my opinion about this. If you would allow double contact in general on the second touch, you would have less interruption. Okay, there are many other interruptions of our game, I know, but it would be more attractive to media. It would be more attractive to the spectators. I mean, if somebody non-volleyball player comes to our games, they probably do not know most of the time why this is now called, and one of this is like the double call on the second touch. The second thing is, I don't know if you write it this way. This is easier for the referees. I mean, I've seen so many aggression on the field with referees that lost the game. They started whistling the second ball on a different level than they ended the game, since they just lost it. And I've seen aggression against the people that we need most, namely the referees. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I've seen tactical, how do you say, moaning, technical aggression, tactical, that the people all the time groan and say, oh, what is this, or whatever, just to set the ref under pressure.
Right.
And I think this is not the way we normally want to play the game. I know there are things where if I see the screening taking place now, the screening in our, you call it in English, breakpoint phase, when we serve.
Right.
Screening has developed. If you don't do this, you have a disadvantage. I don't like the screening that it is done right now, where like 5 people are just standing in front, and just because the server jumps and the ball is not screened by the people and the player, I think this is the rule. Yeah. It is not called. So this is the same thing. At one point with the double calls of referees, you were not. You would have to start again, since you would have a disadvantage in the game if you don't do this. Mm-hmm. Another thing is, if the referees would not call doubles, they had less impact on the outcome of the game. I know if you have a close call with the ball down the line, they have an impact as well, since they have to judge. But it was just lower the impact they have. Another thing would be easier for the refs is if you have two teams playing, and the one has a very good setter and the one has a very bad setter, the ref himself, they don't know how to judge the game then. Okay, if they, I mean, I'm talking maybe of third division or even second division. You have a good one, has no problems, and the other one has problems. That is quite hard for referees, and that would be much easier. Another thing is easier for the referees is that all levels of play would be the same. We do not call doubles at all.
Right. That
would be very clear, and just that we do not call them. I don't talk about the third contact. I don't have a really an opinion about this, but that just would be the same.
Yeah, which then would take out the concern about refs having to adjust, or potentially, how they call things at different levels. Do you want them to call it tighter at a certain level versus looser at a different level? Which is a conversation that people have all the time.
Yes, and that comes up with aggression itself. I know refs that actually call the captains at the beginning of the match and said, okay, I don't call anything. Do what you want, because they want to have how do you say, they want the game to be quiet. I said, I don't care. I will not whistle down any double. Just okay. The thing is, what I always think, a good setter will always, in the long run, have better positioning of his sets than the one that is actually doing a very, very ugly overhead pass. I just believe in this, since I think technical execution, if it's good, high level, that increases just the accuracy of your set. So I don't see actually an advantage of somebody being with an ugly technique over somebody who has a good technique. The good technique will prevail in the end. That's just my opinion.
I'm with you on that one, definitely.
Okay, so these are the ones that is just, for me, I say these are the pros. Okay, a little bit more attractive, it's fine, but the easier refereeing thing, you would just get away with all this negative things we have in every gym. I mean, we have like up to 9 divisions in Germany. It goes from first Bundesliga, which is professional, all the way down to some call it recreational level. But they do have games, they do have seasons, they do have referees, and it goes all the way down. So it is competitive, even though the teams probably practice once a week or something. They're just doing this for fun, and they just love the competition. And I have referee educators seen who do the recertification process for the referees that tell me, I tell people that they have to call double, and then they watch the Olympics or watch Olympic qualification or our first Bundesliga, where it's not called at all. Since the higher you get, the more they align to the keep the ball flying thing of the World Federation.
Yep.
And that is a big problem, that you tell young kids at 17, 18 to do their first referee license, what they should do, but on higher levels, it is just like a gentleman agreement. Don't call it screening, same thing. Group screening.
Yep.
So these are just the things I thought about. They were pretty easy. I collected, like I said, on 60 about comments. And the first thing is, it was a real emotional issue. Most of the people that actually said, no way, we do not want that rule to go away, they had very emotional reasons for this. I mean, that is the death to technical practice. We can play catch and throw then, or do not change the rule again, since we had some rule changes, a lot of them, like in the late 90s and 2000s. And it even goes like very, is that word unfactual, when they say, what do we need coaches for then? So it's a very emotional thing, and bad technique should not be rewarded. Contradicts the character of a technical demanding sport. Yes, volleyball is technical demanding. They even come the aesthetic part of volleyball. This is a game that people love to watch, and we all know a setter that has a very clean overhand pass, that is a joy to watch. We all know this. Funny thing is that these are pretty much most of the things were emotional that were against it. We're like, we've done it all the time. I've been doing this for 30 years. It took me so long to actually set in a good way, and now all the people should be able to do this. That's like a personal, emotional thing.
Yeah, you get a lot of it is former setters or current setters, it seems like.
Sure. It takes a while. The reason why volleyball players become pretty good golfers, in my opinion, when they're old, is that volleyball players are used to the fact that it takes a while to learn something right. It takes a while. And the same thing here. And I know that these people are like, whatever, pissed off that they probably got called many times, and they worked hard to get rid of this, and now it should be all allowed. I understand. What I have here, excuse me?
Yeah, go ahead.
What I have here with these two is that if I talk about less interruption and more attractive, a lot of comments were like, we need to raise the attraction of our sport with other measures. They still like better commentators. I've heard your discussion with the VNL commentator and Mark yesterday or the day before yesterday.
Right, with Clayton.
Yeah, this one. Okay, I'm sorry. This means shorten the sets. They tell, okay, don't play to 25. The volleyball game pretty much is boring until we come to 12 to 18. It just takes too long. That something is happening. I know they changed in table tennis. They changed a couple of years ago the sets from 21 to 11, and I think they play now the best out of 7 instead of best out of 5 or something. And that shows me, since I like the idea as well to shorten the sets again, that there is energy from the beginning, since it just goes to 11.
FIBB didn't experiment with that a couple of years ago, didn't they? With one of the youth championships or something.
I've heard about it. I was very disappointed that there was a very, very short notice somewhere where, oh no, it just the length of the games were pretty much the same, and I think that was just some personal gusto or something that somebody said, no, okay, don't. Yeah, probably. Then we're like things like rule changes do not make a sport more attractive. There's so many of these comments were like going to, we need to raise the attractiveness of our sport, but like not with a rule change.
Sure.
Okay.
I'd be curious if
hold on.
I could ask them how they do that.
Excuse me, I can't hear you right now. Hold on a second. You sound like a robot. Hold on. Is that me? No. Let me just stop the... So I do not see John anymore. Can anybody read me still? Yes. Oh, thank you. So it's John. Yes, we blame it all on John.
Yeah, it was me. I guess, I don't know, something happened.
No problem.
I got kicked out.
Thank you, Giannis. Giannis just, it was John. Yes. If anybody's asking, John's always the one to blame, I learned. Just.
That's what happens when you're the host.
I know. Hold on. Let me just get my... do we have any questions up to now? Otherwise, I would just show my other ideas and thoughts and we start the conversation then. What do you say? John, you're gone again.
Yeah.
That's the robot again.
Function. It's a little bit easier to use the chat. My internet connection is unstable, it's telling me.
You're back.
Yeah, I didn't actually leave that time.
Okay. So my question was, are there any questions or comments right now, or do you want me to just continue with that little concept, the slide I have, and then we ask questions afterwards?
We got one from Andre. Are there any stats about the number of setter errors that are available?
Not that I looked for or found. Do you know?
Well, I know in the NCAA they do keep track of ball handling errors, which primarily is the setter. Sometimes it could be somebody else, obviously, taking a second or the third contact. So those numbers, I don't know if they're kept. They must be kept under FIVB stats because they do count for points. I just don't know how they attribute them.
As far as I remember, with my last team where we used data volley, we had the numbers of actually setter errors, but I don't know if this was standard or our coach actually put this in for me. I don't know actually.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested if there was a scout man who had a standardized. Actually, Ruben's on here. Ruben, is that a standard thing for scout men to put ball handling errors into the scout file? Meanwhile, Giannis has the question: was there a majority opinion in your research, pro or con?
Funny thing is, most of the answers were con. But I know if something really, pisses you off, you tend to comment easier than you say, okay, I think it's a good thing. So people tend, if they're against something, they tend to write more comments than somebody who says, okay, it's fine. So I just do not know. But I've asked people since 2013, this is in my mind. So I asked a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of them say, okay, just get away with that. This is just distracting us from the game. and just all the aggression in the gyms we have with referees losing the game, or even a team is strategically arguing all the time, that just kills the game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe we can do some sort of poll. Find a large group of people and just do a semi. You could never probably call it an official poll or a statistical poll, but it would be interesting to do a legitimate one instead of it just being of people talking in comments. Actually voting.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, let me just continue this. I'll share again. John, are you still there? Every time I share, you're gone. Okay. What I noticed, the people that I said it was pretty much an emotional issue, all the cons, they said, there were like phrases like, if volleyball was easy, it would be called soccer. I don't know if this is an English phrase already or also, but in Germany you hear that all the time, since soccer is the biggest one, and you even see that on T-shirts. Okay, if volleyball was easy, it would be called soccer. So what I think, if we keep feeling as something better, that's what I noticed. If we keep on feeling as something better, we shouldn't be surprised that people have little interest in watching volleyball games who are not volleyballers themselves. That's what we are most of the times in Europe missing. These are people who played volleyball themselves. They are relatives. There are grandmothers, fathers, moms, whatever. But I noticed again, and I see all the time, that we sometimes think volleyball is something, this is the academic sport since it comes from the colleges, and this is the intelligent sport for the intelligent, and the aesthetic whatever. That's what one of my big parts is. If we print some of these things on T-shirts and proclaim this all over the world, we shouldn't be surprised that we don't get any people into the gym that are not volleyballers, since I think we seem to be stuck up. Okay.
Okay.
So
yeah,
these are
interesting.
Yeah, pros and cons. Interesting is right here. Hold on. If we would change the rule, okay, if the double on the second ball would be allowed generally, how would setting develop? Somebody said, what about somebody who is doing only lateral setting to hide even more what he's supposed to do and what he's about to do? So we have seen sports develop in so many ways, and people came up with solutions we never heard of. We know this in volleyball as well. So this is an interesting question. If we change the rule, what would happen? We don't know of now. Second thing, possible impact is negative. Do you see my mouse pointer?
Yes.
Okay, very good. What about practice? If the double is not called, would we have a negative attitude, a raise of negative attitude of setters towards technical perfection? Do they say, "Hey, coach, I don't want to be perfect. I don't need to be perfect"? I mean, my opinion is still, the better the technique, that the higher the accuracy. But I can understand that they can be players that think that way. Maybe that happens. And the third one was like this, what I said with the NCAA thing. What happens on the setter jump? What happens on a set that goes over with the NCAA thing? I mean, the rule says the double contact on the first has to be in the same action. I think this is the phrase they use. So that's why if you get hit by a massive kill, and you touch it twice and it goes up, that's one touch. What about the setter jump? I mean, if I have the possibility to touch it twice within one action, I don't know what the setters will come up then. Okay, this is interesting. So this is just, we don't know how would the setting develop if we should change the rules. That has to be taken into consideration from my point of view.
The interesting thing for me is I suspect at the top level, you probably don't see a very big impact because setters set the way they do for reasons that already exist.
Yes.
Part of it is for you said, like you said, earlier, consistency and accuracy, and partly for deception. I don't know if that necessarily changes, because if you are suddenly doubling the ball a lot, is that going to increase your accuracy or your consistency? I tend not to think so.
I agree, but I know that the world-class players, females or males, they have also world-class brains. And if they come up with something, they would use it. I know.
Oh, for sure. If there's a loophole somewhere, they'll figure it out. One of the interesting things for me, and I'd love to see somebody do like a really good slow motion capture on setters and demonstrate I bet you, according to the interpretation that is currently being used on what is a double contact on a set, which is basically, hand-to-hand transfer. I bet you there's a lot more doubles than people think, because doubles almost never get called on a quick set.
Yeah.
But I've seen replays where you can see that it happens. It's not quite as bad as that horrible scene in the movie Side Out. But
I know the movie.
In slow motion, you can see it. Yeah. So that's actually kind of the other side of the argument for me is, I'm with you on the one side saying, I don't think it changes how much a setter is going to train, because the setters aren't training not to double the ball. At least I have never worked with setters with the objective of not doubling the ball. I want them to put the ball in a location consistently that can be attacked in the way that we want it to be attacked. So I'd throw out the all the arguments in terms of, well, now there's no reason to train for technical perfection. No. It's like, some people have used the example of quarterbacks in football, where some of them throw a much tighter spiral on their pass than others, which is a much more technically proficient throwing action from their perspective. And at least theoretically, I'm not enough of an expert on the throwing dynamics of NFL quarterbacks, but presumably there's an accuracy, consistency element to that, which is why they try to do that versus just throwing up any old type of ball.
Is it called in football if somebody throws I think it's called dead duck?
Wounded duck. Yeah,
a wounded
the ball
duck
just kind of floats around and wobbles around a lot. Yeah.
Is this called an error? No.
It's just your receiver probably can't catch it.
Okay, somebody tries to catch it. Nevertheless, we don't. They are probably surprised where it goes then, since it has very unpredictably. Okay, I understand. Yeah. That's one thing I forgot. Thailand. Here we go. Somebody said if the double contact is allowed, it would strengthen the defense. And so they have the advantage. The setter does have an advantage. So if the setter is running and so the reception is bad, the setter has to run and he hardly gets it, then he or she would have an advantage since he can still set overhand, and which he could not set overhand if the double was called. So this is like, since I said I don't see any advantage I don't see any advantage for the setter, but they said, okay, there is an advantage in very, very little situations, and it would even strengthen the defense. So if the defense is bad and the setter has to run for the ball, he or she might be able to set it overhand and then have a pretty much has a better quality of pass, otherwise bumping the ball. That was pretty interesting.
I can go along with that to a degree. My stopping point would be, yeah, but they probably don't call those anyway because that's an athletic move. You know, that falls under the so-called athletic move interpretation, where if the setter is running and chasing the ball or has to move, you know, in a challenging way, the refs are going to give them leeway on their ball handling anyway. So yeah. I'm not sure that that would necessarily translate in terms of real application into whether balls get called any more or less.
But interestingly, out of 60 or 70 comments, where most of them were con, this was the only one that was not emotionally driven.
Sure.
That was the interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. There were some people that actually said, okay, if we keep the rules, how can we get rid of the things that Jan actually told us that is negative? They said during warm-up as a referee, I watch both teams, both setters, and after the warm-up where they have no pressure, I have a pretty good notion what they can do or what they cannot do, and according to this, I set my judging for the upcoming match. That's right. What somebody said. Okay, that sounded pretty realistic to me. Then somebody said, okay, somebody would have to just put different scales for different level of play.
Right.
Funny thing is that the tendency is that in upper level it's nearly not called at all, since keep the ball flying is the thing that makes money, okay? And yeah. Professional money is the one that rules it. But they say put in different scales that would not put away the problem of a referee starting to judge one way and during the game, not intentionally, but somehow the game involves ends up judging differently at the end, which is like the worst that can happen to a ref. And some were just saying, okay, I put it a little bit different. They say, okay, the refs are just bad. The refs have to get better or whatever. So that's what they say, that it needs to be better communication of what is a double and what is not a double. So the refs have to improve.
Sure.
These are the things. What they said, what if we keeping the rules, what actually happens.
Yeah. Oliver, actually to that specific thing, Oliver asked the question, do we need to change the rules or do we stop calling it? Of course, he had to throw in the aside like we do right now with rotational errors, meaning we don't call rotational errors at the top level for sure. My response would be, as I understand it, I haven't done a deep dive on the rule book, but as I understand it, the double contact, as it's called for setters, for example, is an interpretation. It's not the rule. The rule basically says, it's the old original rule, you shall not touch the ball 2 times in a row. So the double call that we have now is simply an interpretation, which to me sounds, it's like an extreme version of the original rule. So all they would have to do is just get rid of the interpretation.
There are zillions of opinions about this. Somebody said rotation of the ball. Somebody says sound. I have seen. I mean, the lower you get in leagues and divisions, the more adventurous it becomes. What people think was right or wrong. Okay, so you're gonna again, John. I don't think you closed your eyes and let's wait for him. Here we are back again.
No, I think I'm back. Maybe barely.
Yeah, not really. Okay.
Carry on.
Yeah,
Carry on.
that's okay. But I think it is a judgment. You can tell all your refs, okay, you can give them frameworks and say, okay, within these boundaries, you have to actually make the calls. But at the end, it's judgment, and you won't get away with the thing of refs changing their judgment throughout a game, unintentionally, but it just happens. And that's when you see the captains like grabbing the referee stand and shaking it and whatever. I've seen it all. I've been nearly all levels in our Germany divisions. I've seen it all. The thing is, the last thing I want to see with my screen is what I showed at the bottom. Actually, these are the questions that are, for me, most important. Can a setter gain an advantage from double setting? And does technical perfection becomes less important, allowing double contacts? These are the two things, which was my quintessence of the whole thing. These are the ones we have to answer there.
Yeah, I think the first one is definitely the one that always comes first to my mind, is does a team actually gain an advantage if you don't call a double? Aside from the fact that currently it would be called and that would be an advantage to the other team. But if you put that aside, if you say your setter doubles the ball, do you actually gain an advantage? Now, if the ball goes over the net, especially in a way that obviously is advantageous for your team, then okay, I could, that's, then you're having that third contact or that overset discussion where potentially you could say yes, they could potentially gain an advantage. Otherwise, what we're left with is what you brought up earlier with the setter that's on the run chasing a ball, and maybe they can get a ball with hands that otherwise they would have to take with their arms. And as I said, I don't know if in actual reality that's an advantage or not based on the way it's currently called anyway. Other than that, beyond that one possible situation, if you double a ball on a non-quick set, chances are there's an implication for your accuracy. So that's not advantageous to your team.
And even if there is some advantage for like strengthening the defense, in my opinion, the advantages on the pro side are just much more significant. So for me, it's still allowing the double contact setting in general would be something that just, how do you say, that raises the level of play, raises the attractiveness of the game. The game is less interrupted. We would have less aggressiveness. Training setters. What I said earlier. If you have a young setter, it's not your error or a set. It's just a scale of sets. You do a wonderful, a perfect set, a good set, a bad set, a lame duck. Okay, and if you set a lame duck, yeah, I mean, you would not even surprise the opponent blocker, but you will also surprise your attacker most of the times as well. It's just too low or it's all over the place, and it's fine.
Well, and to your earlier point about the player who really struggled with her confidence when she was in a match and had hand problems as a result, I think a net outcome of this, of not calling, could be better, more quality in the population of setters, because you have kids coming up through. They're not worried about being called for a double every time they touch the ball or every time they have to take a high ball, and they can build the confidence that allows them to become better setters in the long run.
Yeah, I had two years ago, I had a setter in second division. This is like semi-professional. There's money involved. They have like a budget of 200,000 euros. So there is money on the table. And that setter struggled the whole season. If there was a high ball and like the defense coming from all the way up, she was bumping. She was bumping. And if she tries to set it, even standard sets, even without pressure from the receive or for the serve receive, that was just a head problem. She was for the whole season. That was terrible for her and for us, for everybody. But the next season it seemed to be fine under a different coach. So probably that was my thing.
Always blame the coach.
It's fine. It's fine. That's what we're all used to. The team wins, the coach loses.
Yeah, this is true. Anybody have any comments, observations, thoughts? The whole idea of throws, it's obviously a little bit of a different topic, but some of the responses that you got was, well, now people will just throw the ball all the way around. First off, my initial reaction whenever I see that is like, no, we're not taking out that you can't throw the ball. That's a different thing altogether. But there are a lot of throws in the game where people are taking the ball. I've seen setters take a ball from the left shoulder to the right shoulder and then release, and you go, okay.
Yeah, that's a different thing. But I've seen that like in many of the discussions around this, the emotionally driven discussions, the cons, they were like, okay, I can throw the ball. No, you cannot. I'm talking about the double contact. I'm not talking about the lift, I think you guys called it.
Yeah. Giannis says, I'm training technique for accuracy, not for aesthetics. Exactly.
Sure.
And by definition, the two of them do link together. Good technique is aesthetically pleasing, at least for anybody who's a volleyball aficionado.
Yeah, agreed, actually. So, I'm pretty much done with all I needed to say about this.
Yeah.
Hold on. This is.
Yeah. Okay. Some refs almost automatically call a double if some other player than the setter handles the ball. How would that be affected? Well, it's very true. First of all, I've seen maybe a little bit less these days, but I've definitely seen situations where it looked like the ref was already starting to blow the whistle if a middle took the set, took the second ball. Yeah. It didn't even matter what happened. It was like the whistle already started as soon as the ball made contact. But if you change the rule as we're talking about, then it doesn't matter who takes second ball.
We have two situations. We have the situation where the setter is under pressure and the setter sets a double for any reason, close call to the net or whatever. And the other one is that that the setter takes the first ball and anyone else has to set. And if I put this in pros, that we take off the pressure of the liberals are probably used to this, but if it comes right at the middle will set. If it comes for any reason right to the opposite right front, they will set. They will not call the liberal. They will just do. And these discussion, if you would say, okay, you just take the pressure off the other players when they need to do the setting, the arguments were all okay, then they just need to learn it. So that's the discussion where we come to the emotional again. So the emotional driven cons, they put the emotional thing that they practiced this for so long, it took them so long to do it. This is just above all.
Yeah.
I understand as well.
apparently Oliver's been doing some research on the side for us. He said he just checked the rules that I'm right. Double contacts are defined as hitting the ball twice in succession. Means you have to get rid of the interpretation, not the rule.
I can't see this. Do I see this in the?
It's in the Q&A. So if you hit the Q&A,
yeah,
it'll come up there.
Okay. As hitting the ball twice in succession.
So yeah, basically, I mean, the original intention of the rule is that one player could not play the ball 2 times in a row. It's very simple.
Exactly. That's the one within one action. And if I would be very interested how the very intelligent players, what they would come up with. If this is, then they probably would discuss, is this still in one action or not? And then we have a judgment call again from the refs.
In theory, we have a test case on this because, like as you said, the FIVB doesn't want them calling doubles at the top level anyway. So has there been any meaningful change in how setters at the elite, professional, and national team level, execute the skill or, perform their role?
Yeah, okay. It's just maybe they're just scared to do something else on that level. so many things are involved. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's what you said with rotational errors. I've seen this in January. I've been to the Olympic qualification tournament in Berlin. And somebody told me, watch if in setter in rotation 1 and if you're in reception, watch the setter here with these teams. The setter was pretty much nearly at the net already when the ball was actually hit. Yeah. So they start running when the jump server takes off already. I couldn't believe it since I hadn't noticed, but it was very, very clear.
Yeah, that could, I'm not saying it does, but it could come down to misunderstanding the rules because there are definitely players and coaches who don't understand that it's the point of contact, not the toss, that decides whether you're in rotation or out of rotation. It's on the serve itself, not the toss for the serve. It's the serve itself. So you can't leave the toss.
Yeah.
There are a few rules that people think they know that they don't really know. Getting back to kind of, you talked about the aggression side of things. One of the more interesting elements in the U.S., and I can't speak to abroad, but at juniors tournaments, at college events, the crowd, it gets very vocal when they think that there's been even the most minute of mishandling. I mean, I've watched things on television that look on television like it was a perfectly clean set. Now, of course, it's not quite the same as being there live. Your perspective is a little bit different. But to hear the crowd yelling and screaming because maybe the ball rotated a little bit. This is another one of those things where people don't realize that, as you talked about, sound, and those are not supposed to be considered when referees are making decisions.
That might be the same thing I told earlier about strategic arguing that has become more and more a sport in itself. I remember male players from 2nd Division Germany, which is semi-professional. They told me, Jan, the referee should never be sure that he called the right thing. Never. This is pretty much a quote.
Wow.
So if we have in 2nd Division Germany, we do not have line judges.
Right.
So I mean, these guys get some speed on the ball already. It is not possible for the second or the first referees to turn their heads as quick as they could. If this one goes down on the 10-feet line, they cannot see this.
Right.
So if it's close to the line, they all yell.
Yeah.
Both teams.
Everybody thinks that. Yeah. Everybody.
So this is a strategic. I call it strategic arguing now. And he said, never let the ref be sure that he did the right thing. Maybe you get 1 or 2 points. So that might be with the people strategic arguing. But I remember since I've been with the sport a while. There was a time where on the first contact, the double was called as well. And I know about 9 out of 10, whatever, 99 out of 100 receptions were all taken with with bumping the ball. And if then somebody took the serve in overhand pass, you had that droning on the stands as well. It was everywhere.
Well, and honestly, a lot of people probably thought that you weren't allowed to do it because they never saw anybody do it. So it's like, oh, it must not be allowed.
Yeah, it's on beach volleyball, it's the same thing. Beach volleyball has the same rule as it has indoors, like, oh God, 30 years ago. Okay, so I think that what I wanted to say, that the spectators nowadays argue and groaning and screaming on every set that might be at least a little bit double, that will go away. The same thing as the other ones is go away. That will just go away, and then it's fine.
Yeah. Although they might feel that now that they don't have anything to yell and scream about anymore.
They'll find something else.
That's probably true.
Probably. I just said, never let a referee be sure he did the right thing. That is a tough one.
Yeah.
So that means on the same thing. That's on the same thing. If you don't yell and scream and whatever after the ball hits the floor, you have a disadvantage. If you don't do it, you have a disadvantage. It's not the thing what I like in volleyball. Not at all.
So Oliver wants to know what the next step is. What do we do now? Well, the NCAA is apparently at least looking at taking that step with the evaluation that they were hoping to do this spring. Clearly, that's been pushed back. I don't know how much of a spring season would the male equivalent of a spring season would look like in the autumn. I don't know if that's something that they could try as an experiment there, and then the women would try it in 2021, if that's a possibility. But at least one major organization is looking into it. As you said, FIVB they haven't explicitly written it out of the rules, but they're certainly discouraging the calls. So do we just have to keep encouraging them and everybody in that?
Yeah. I mean, the NCAA has a lot of...
Get the German Federation?
I don't know about
the German Federation to do a test?
I don't know if somebody has the contact to do this. I mean, you have to be in some committee. Probably, yes. But I know the NCAA has rules that the FIVB does not have, and I've never seen... were they rules coming from NCAA it being adopted worldwide? I mean, the serving libero is an interesting thing for years.
All the substitutions. Yeah. I haven't seen too many rules go from the U.S. to FIVB.
Yeah.
They all seem to go the other direction.
Yeah, it would be interesting if this is still, to get somebody from the FIVB maybe who is in some rules committee or has contact to people in the rules committee to get to see their opinion about this. I'm positive they talked about this on FIVB level, since it supports the idea of keep the ball flying.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it happens not that often on the highest level. Probably that's the point why it's not on their focus.
Yeah, and the other thing I could throw out there is that they could, based on the way things are currently ruled, they could make the case that, well, you advantage the offense. And we're trying to decrease the advantage to the offense. And actually what I should say is you disadvantage the defense because they would stop getting points that they would otherwise get. I don't know if that's a good argument or not, but to the extent that FIVB is consistently when working to try to degrade the effectiveness of offenses,
but this is
whether it's worked or not.
But I disagree with this. How would I put an advantage on the offense if somebody? Then we're back on the big slide here. A double call, in my opinion, will never be as accurate as a how do you say, a good call, a good set.
Mm-hmm.
A double set would never have that accuracy. So I don't see any advantage for the offense.
No, in terms of execution, yeah, you're exactly right. What I'm saying is, in line with the current rules, where if there's a double, it gets called, the defending team gets a point. Yeah. So if you take it away, now the defending team no longer gets a point. So from that perspective, you have a disproportionate benefit that goes to the offensive team.
Yeah,
because they no longer give up the point. I'm not saying that's a good rational.
Yeah. Points would be more earned. I've written in an article many years ago. Points would be more earned and less given. Okay, if you make an error, you just give the point to the other team.
Right.
If the doubles are not called, you have to play that ball, and you still have to earn the point.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Giannis says, I think Velasco implements it at the juniors level in Italy. That would be interesting to get to know more information about.
Yes. I think your network is much better than mine internationally, so maybe you just spread out your fingers and see what you can get about this. That would be very interesting, yes.
Well, Ruben is good friends with Julio. Ruben, if you're listening, have you heard anything about that, about Velasco doing that? Maybe Ruben is not paying attention. Yesterday he was on one of these, but his wife called.
Yeah, it's okay. It's fine.
All right, here he goes. Ruben says Velasco would like to somehow change that rule. All right. So I don't know if he's actually, yeah, I don't know if he's actually been able to do it, or if it's something he's looking to do. It would be interesting to find out. Ruben, maybe we can ask Mario.
I mean, you just need the right persons on the bus to steer that bus to that thing, allowing double contact setting in general. Just need the right people at the right time to raise their hands, and then it's a rule.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Ruben says Willie Paredes is working on it. Okay, maybe something will happen. All right. If anybody has any more questions or comments, feel free to shoot them up. Otherwise, we could probably wrap this up. I think we covered all the ground pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, John, for having me.
Yeah. Well, thanks for proposing this.
Yes.
Always a good conversation.
Keep up the good work. I've seen the incredible lineup you have. Even Oliver in there.
Somewhere.
And just keep the good stuff going, John. Well done.
Yeah, I will do as much as I possibly can.
Okay, thank you very much.
Until maybe they have to carry me out of the stretcher.
That's okay. Okay.
All right. Have a good evening to all of you in Europe. Good rest of the day for anybody here from the States. We'll sign off.
Bye-bye.